Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Art of Selling Travel podcast. I am so excited to have you join me. This week on the show, I'm answering a question from Tiffany that I got at a conference that I was speaking at. And her question was, I want to co-host a charity auction alongside of a cruise line. So in this case, the cruise line was willing to offer up a free cruise that could be auctioned off to an entity of her choice, a charity of her choice, as a way in which to really enhance her ability to get out there and to have some visibility. And so she wanted to know what was the best way to go about contacting the entity. Well, here's the thing. Before I can answer any of those questions, before I can answer that question, I had a whole list of other questions that absolutely needed to be asked, because I could have just said, yeah, pick up the phone and you tell them, I'm going to give you this, you're going to get that. Bada bing, bada boom, we got a deal done. The problem is that's rarely how simple things are. In fact, I'm going to say the likelihood of that truly working without hiccups, probably not very high. So the first follow-up question I had for her was why? Why do you want to do this? Why is it that this is what you want to do? And so her response was to break into the luxury market and get to be known in better circles in my hometown. I'm like, okay, great. Who is it that you're wanting to do this with or for? And so she gave me the name of the cruise line. I'm not going to tell you here. You got to do your own legwork to see which one it is that you want to work with. But she also gave me the type of organization that she wanted to work with too, because that's also very important. See, we want to make sure that when we're doing things, that everything lines up, that we're working with the right suppliers, with the right organizations, and that the supplier and the organization go hand in hand and that they actually fit together. And then, of course, the third one, do they know you have this opportunity? To which she said, not yet. So I actually said that was a good thing. And why is that a good thing? Because, as we always say, the grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. If something seems too good to be true, it just might be. And so we wanted to make sure that we go into this with all of the right information in place. So first thing before absolutely everything else, get the complete list of terms and conditions. You need to know every ounce of that terms and conditions. I can't tell you how many things have gone astray because of terms and conditions. Don't let those terms and conditions mess up what might otherwise become a beautiful relationship between you and that entity or that organization, that charity in your town, into those circles that are possibly going to get you all sorts of recognition and get you to be seen and heard. We want to make sure that there's no possibility for terms and conditions to screw up a future relationship. In fact, here's my tip for you. Have somebody who is not in the travel industry read them over for you as well. I would even encourage you to run them past a lawyer. I genuinely, actually, very strongly encourage that. Why? Because it's so important to know what the fine print is. We all know that there's some amazing suppliers out in our industry, but there's also a couple of them that really love to stack in some additional terms and conditions, such as availability, which availability is a big thing for everybody. There's got to be availability in order to do it. But they may have so many layers and restrictions on their availability that you may end up auctioning off something that can never, ever be redeemed. So what's the expiry? When is it that they have to have this booked by? When is it do they have to have this traveled by? See, some of them will have a short expiry, and we make assumptions that that expiry is when it has to be booked by. But perhaps it has to be traveled by then as well. So it's very important to know, what are those expiry? What are those timelines? What is it that that looks like? Also, too, some of them, especially when you get into the promotional and the quote unquote free ones, have limitations where it can only be booked 30 or 60 days in advance. What are the hidden costs. Those things that aren't included. Is it that they're going to give you the lowest category, and in order to upgrade into a category that a person that would probably be the type to buy on an auction like this is not going to be happy with, and therefore they have to pay an astronomical amount of money on top of what they're already donating to the charity through the auction to be able to have something of a better caliber? When and what can it be used on? Is there only specific ships? Is there only specific itineraries, specific lengths of time? When can it be used? How many people can go? How many is included? How many is not included? Again, what are all of those things that are in there? Is it an exclusive category? Is there only so many days prior to going? What are those exclusions and blackouts? Heads up, I'm going to tell you 99% of the time, it does not matter how free and open everything is. They're still going to have blackout dates. They're still going to have exclusions. They're still going to have a whole lot of rules. And then finally, what does marketing look like? What do you have to provide for the cruise line? And I am referring to a cruise line in this particular scenario because that's what she brought. But change out cruise line for whatever type of supplier it is that you're working with. What do they need in order to have their payback for this cruise? If they're donating this cruise, how much of the marketing do they need to have? How much of that recognition do they need to have? And then I want you to be very crystal clear on this. How are you also going to get your own name in there every bit as prominently or even more prominently than that cruise line? And just as ready to chase a squirrel for a second, just as importantly is making sure you're having a good conversation with your organizer when the time comes so that they don't really run up the name of the cruise line and only the cruise line and you get left out of it. You want to make sure that you're not just there as quote unquote the cruise line's representative, but actually as the person that you are, as the business that you are, as the professional that you are. You need to be recognized. You need to be listed as one of the sponsors right alongside of that cruise line. If you're the one that's bringing the two parties together, you need to be included in there. But also, you need to know what are those requirements for the cruise line, for the supplier. If all things are good and it's time to move forward, then that's good. Let's do it. So as much as we would all love to believe that we would go to a cruise or go to a nonprofit organization and say to them, in this particular case, I believe it was a river cruise. I didn't put that in my notes, but I'm pretty sure it was a river cruise line that was offering up a free stateroom. And so in which case we are talking thousands of dollars. And on a charity auction, quite often that's going to return even more money. So we're talking 4, 5, possibly as much as $10,000 or more coming into the charity. I know of a lot of charitable organizations that would be over the moon ecstatic to have this type of an opportunity, to be able to possibly generate that kind of dollar for their event off of just one auction item. They would be ecstatic. So we think that this should be a super simple sell, right? That we should be able to just come in and say, hey, let's do a charity auction. I can give you the big grand Mac Daddy of prizes to be auctioned off for the night. The problem is just because you're pumped up and you know the value doesn't mean that that charitable organization is. See, anytime you do something different, you create a new level of uncertainty. You're going to go in and you're going to be expecting excitement and all of these things. But then their nerves, their second guessing, their rigidity of not wanting to try something new. How many times have you ever heard, especially when you're dealing with legacy groups, nonprofit groups? Well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, the problem is I'm pretty sure when you are sitting around having your meetings and discussing how your bank balance is dropping, because you're not getting as many donors or you're not getting as many this or as many that, that you start to question them and say, but I'm providing you with an opportunity. Well, what we've always done has always worked. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. Oh, I have volunteered with so many organizations where their fear of stepping away from what they've always known to work, even if it doesn't work as well as it could, their fear of not wanting to try something new in case it doesn't work can be almost crippling for the organization. You're going to come through, and that nerves and that apprehension and other such may appear as objections or even obstruction, especially when you're dealing with an ego-driven board. See, a lot of these organizations are run by a volunteer board of directors, and they always want to have the biggest, brightest idea. They want to have the safest idea. They want to have the idea that they see as the path of least resistance. A lot of times that can create a lot of pushback and a lot of frustration for other board members, but also too for you. I know I've worked with other travel advisors inside of the Success Studio where they have come to me and they've said, I can't get past this one board member and I know they're gatekeeping and I can't get to the other board members. And that happens too. We need to know who it is that we can talk to. And it doesn't mean that when you get a no from one, that it's not possible to go and talk to a different board member. Because when somebody said, I don't think that's going to work, are they speaking on behalf of the board or are they just speaking off of what they themselves as an individual believes? Because again, even when we're talking in the luxury circles, it does not mean everybody travels. It might be somebody who's resistant to travel, or maybe that's not the type of travel they want to do. You've got to get past that one gatekeeper and try to get into the next, particularly when you're coming up in the face of uncertainty. We all know that the question you're going to get is, okay, but how does it really work? Like, seriously, you're going to give this to me for free? Now, here's the irony. The groups that are going to push back on this and the ones you're actually approaching with it are the ones that don't believe that that's even possible. I used to get asked on the weekly when I had a physical location. Well, you could just give away a trip, couldn't you? Like, you could just give away a trip for 2 to Mexico, or you could give a trip for 2 to here, a trip for 2 to there, or a whole family to Disney, or wherever it was. I used to get asked almost every single week, sometimes multiple times a week, if I could donate to this auction or to that. And when I would offer them a gift card, or I would offer them, I actually started off, sorry, we are off on a wild tangent right now. I used to offer like packing cubes or a suitcase or backpacks or things of that nature. And I remember the disappointment in their eyes every time. And I'm not even talking about logoed ones. They're like, well, we were kind of hoping that you could give us like, this is a family event. So we were hoping you could give us like Disney for family of 4, nothing major, just the flights and the hotel and Disney passes for, I don't know, like a week. Yeah, I don't think so. No, that's not actually possible. So it did actually get to the point where then I would start to give away gift cards. The reason why I gave away gift cards to my agency is because then I had control over it and I called it the pay for marketing, as in I only paid for the marketing that worked. And so I would do that instead. And I could actually make those pretty hefty. I do a couple of $100 up to, I think the biggest one I ever did was 1,000, but that was a very specific organization that I was working with. But I had control over how that was going to be used. And I knew what my return on investment was going to be. Don't ever give away anything without knowing what that return on investment is. I think we'll have to do that in another episode. But I also want you to look at when they're worried about how it will work. You've got to have all those terms and conditions with you. You have to be able to lay them all out. Lay out what this term and condition is versus what that one is. What does it all look like? How will they know if it works for them or not? Also, Put the bad things in there too. If there's blackout dates, if there's exclusions, if there's this, if there's that, you never want to try and hide behind those ones. You don't want to be like, yeah, and then there's also this other stuff over here. No, you want to be very upfront with that because you want your audience to know, you want that potential client to know right out of the gate what they can expect and what's possible. What do they need to provide? What will you do or what will you provide? So if they need to provide an event with a minimum number of participants and it's this type of clientele, what do they need to provide? Do they need to provide that the cruise line's logo is on all of their marketing, that yours is on all of the marketing? How will you be recognized? How will you go through this? Will you be able to do some sort of a brief presentation to explain what it is that this prize is? Will there be advanced marketing that you can do that helps to, one, get them more ticket sales, but also two, to help elevate your awareness and presence into that community? What do they need to do? And then what will you provide? Will you be in attendance? If they're going to give you an opportunity to create a presentation, and I'm not talking about slide decks and all of that. I am talking like a 30-second to 90-second. Oh my goodness, thank you so much. I am so honored to be able to help such and such organization, to be able to raise money for such and such project. And with help of one of my preferred suppliers, such and such cruise line, it is an absolute honor for you to recognize my agency, blah, 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 in order to be able to present this tonight. As your local travel agency, I am here to help your client or help you to be able to discover whatever part of the world it is you specialize in. It does not have to be in depth. You want to make sure you say your agency name a couple times in there, but not to the point we turn it into a drinking game. Please, people, stop turning your presentations into drinking games. If you have to tell people all the time what it is you do, if you have to tell people over and over and over and over and over to the point that they turn it into a drinking game, it's not fun. Well, maybe, but it's not the type of fun you're headed for. But you get where I'm headed with that. Here's something else I want you to consider. This is your reputation, your brand. You need to partner with the right suppliers, the right partners, the right charities and entities that are in alignment with your goals and your values. If you are a huge believer in protect the animals at all costs, it is all about how we're going to take care of the animals, I'm going to say maybe don't go to a hunting conference to do this. You want to make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with your values, because as much as in theory, your ideal client will be inside that room, there will also be other people who will see the marketing that's taking place for that event. And if it's not in alignment with what the rest of your ideal client is looking at, that can be a devastating blow to your brand. Your reputation, your personal brand is one of the most powerful things that you have in this industry. It is the thing, the only thing that sets you apart from every other travel advisor selling all of the same suppliers in this industry. So make sure that you are protecting it at all costs. If you are working with a cruise line or a supplier or a tour operator that does not work in good faith all of the time, be mindful that a misstep on their part can be a devastating blow to your brand and reputation. Make sure that when you are working with suppliers, when you are working with partners, that partnership is equal, that you have 100% faith in the quality that they're providing, because if you don't, is it worth it? Is the possibility of maybe getting some more clients, maybe getting into the luxury market, maybe getting into the high net worth people of your area worth it if the flip to that is the supplier screws it up? Again, Not every opportunity is the right opportunity. Once things are all set, make sure things are in writing. I cannot stress this enough. You need to have everything in writing. If you are getting X amount of credit for marketing, or X amount of dollars, or X amount of this, or X amount of whatever, that needs to be in there. I am so sad, and this genuinely hurts my heart to say, we are no longer in a handshake world. We no longer can rely solely on the handshake being what it is. And then finally, what if they say no? You may not have had the right person. I kind of touched on this earlier. Just because you ask one board member doesn't mean that they actually get to speak for everybody. Maybe you asked an employee versus a board member, or you asked a board member instead of an employee. You want to make sure that you're asking the right people. You may also not have gotten the right entity. Maybe that's not the right organization for this type of an event. And then the timing may be off. Can it be done at a later time? Again, if a cruise line or a supplier or a tour operator or whoever it is comes to you, they want to do this. That's great. They clearly have their own motivations for it. Don't get wrapped up in the instant, oh my goodness, I have this opportunity. I have to run with it, because they already had their own motivations in place. You need to have yours in place as well. So therefore, if you say to them, okay, but I want to partner with the right organizations, how soon do we have to turn this around? Because if we are on a super tight timeline where you are going to pressure to only specific types of things, again, it may not be the right relationship. See, when everything works well, this has the potential to be absolutely phenomenal. When things don't go well, it has the opportunity to go terribly, terribly wrong. Okay, that's all I have for you this week. Once again, check the show notes. We've got you all linked up. If you're not in our free Facebook group, come join us there. If you are looking to be a part of coaching calls twice a month where you get to come and ask me questions live inside of our group coaching program, come join us over at the Travel Advisor Success Studio. We would love to have you. It's only $27 a month. When you take the annual, you even get it for a better rate. Plus, we're still including, as of now, the Fees with Ease course. So you automatically get that as a bonus when you become an annual subscriber. Not to mention, we from time to time have some membership has its benefits program rewards that you get access to that we don't even talk about on the outside. Until next time, happy selling.